As mentioned in all the debriefs before, this will be a question and answer session.
Como fue mencionado en las reuniones anteriores, esta va a ser una sesión de preguntas y respuestas.
Because we have so many people, what I've decided to do
Como tenemos a muchas personas, lo que he decidido hacer
is to ask several members to ask questions directly to Pedro live.
es pedirle a distintos miembros que le hagan preguntas a Pedro en vivo.
I think I have approximately 10 or 11 written questions.
Creo que tengo aproximadamente 10 u 11 preguntas.
If the live questions are exhausted, we'll move on to the written ones.
Si las preguntas en vivo son evacuadas, vamos a pasar hacia las que están por escrito.
Pedro is preparing to set himself up. Let's open with a word of prayer.
Mientras Pedro se prepara, vamos a abrir con una palabra de oración.
Holy God, we thank you
Santo Dios, te damos gracias
that we can have the privilege of coming together to open and study your word.
de que podamos tener el privilegio de reunirnos para estudiar, abrir y
As we
estudiar tu
study the
palabra.
subject of Acts 27,
Mientras estudiamos el asunto de Hechos 27,
its relation to the institutions,
su relación con las instituciones,
both internally and externally,
tanto internamente como externamente,
and also to the Sunday law,
y también con la ley dominical,
we ask and pray that you would bless this question and answer session,
pedimos que bendigas y guíes esta sesión de preguntas y
and
respuestas,
may each of us have a clearer understanding of what is being taught.
y que cada uno tenga un conocimiento más claro de lo que está siendo enseñado.
In Jesus' name, amen.
En el nombre de Jesús, amén.
So if you can set your video up, Pedro.
Así que si puedes abrir tu video, Pedro.
So I'm going to ask if Aaron can ask the first question.
Voy a pedirle a Aaron que haga la primera pregunta.
I think you're muted.
You're on mute, Aaron.
Good start. Can I just check your methodology on the anchors?
¿Puedo revisar tu metodología en las anclas?
So you discovered Biden by going to the root word in Greek.
Descubriste a Biden yendo a la raíz de la palabra en griego,
But for Kamala, you used an entirely different methodology.
pero para Kamala utilizaste una metodología completamente diferente.
You said a boat and an anchor look like a lotus flower.
Dijiste que un bote y un ancla parecen como una flor de loto.
So William Miller tells you to trace your symbol through the Bible.
William Miller te dice que rastrees tu símbolo a lo largo de la Biblia.
He ran taken away through the Bible.
Yo, por lo tanto, lo llevé por la Biblia, a lo largo de
That
la
would be
Biblia.
the same as you running the word cast or dropped through the Bible.
Y estoy diciendo que lo corras a lo largo de la Biblia.
Elder Jeff ran chariots and horses through the Bible.
El anciano Jeff recorrió a lo largo de la Biblia con las palabras carros y gente de a caballo.
That would be the same if you ran anchors through the Bible.
Y ahora sería lo mismo si recorrieras a lo largo de la Biblia con la palabra anclas.
When Elder Tess wanted to know what a ship represents,
Cuando la anciana Tess quiso ver lo que una nave representaba,
she did the same.
ella hizo lo mismo.
And if you run ship through the Bible, it can represent a church.
Y si recorres con la palabra nave a lo largo de la Biblia, vas a encontrar que representa una iglesia.
But what I think you've done
Pero lo que creo que tú has hecho
you say, I want to know what the anchors symbolize.
es quiero saber lo que el ancla simboliza,
So I'm going to find something that looks like a boat and an anchor.
Así que voy a buscar algo que parezca como un bote y un ancla.
Then you said, well, a lotus flower looks like a boat and an anchor.
Y luego dijiste, una flor de loto parece un barco y un ancla.
Then you've looked for something in the modern world, which means lotus.
Y buscaste algo en el mundo moderno que simboliza un loto. Ok, que significa un loto.
And that's how you decided that the anchors represent Kamala.
Y eso es como representaste que las anclas representan a Kamala.
So that would be like Jeff saying, what looks like a horse
Eso sería como Jeff diciendo, ¿qué se parece o qué se ve como un
maybe
caballo?
a dog or a deer or something.
Quizás un perro, un ciervo o algo.
And then Jeff would have had to find something in the modern world that means dog or deer.
Y luego Jeff tendría que haber buscado algo en el mundo moderno que se pareciera a un perro o un ciervo.
And he would have come to the wrong conclusion.
Y él hubiera llegado a la conclusión incorrecta.
If I would have tested what you're doing with the same ship,
Y si antes hubiera hecho lo que tú estás haciendo con la misma nave,
she'd say, what looks like a ship?
ella diría, ¿qué es lo que se parece a una nave?
Maybe a duck sitting on water or a shipping buoy or something like that.
Quizás un puerto estando en el agua o otro tipo de nave o algo así.
And then Elder Tess would have had to find something in the modern world that means duck.
Y luego Tess tendría que haber buscado algo en el mundo moderno que simbolizara puerto, que significara
So I'm
puerto.
thinking that you're interpreting symbols in a way no one has ever done before.
Así que creo que estás interpretando símbolos de una manera que nadie lo ha hecho previamente.
Because the message doesn't look like rain,
Porque ese mensaje no se parece a lluvia
and a lamb doesn't look like Jesus,
y un cordero no se parece a Jesús
and a field doesn't look like a church.
y el campo no se parece como una iglesia.
And if you agree and you just say, okay, I got that bit wrong, let's just skip that bit,
Y si estarías de acuerdo dirías, ok, podría tener eso equivocado, vamos a saltar solamente eso.
I think your prediction would just fall apart when Biden stepped down for obvious reasons.
Creo que tu predicción se vendría abajo cuando Biden se bajó de la elección por razones obvias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Before you speak, Pedro,
Antes de que
Aaron,
hables,
can you
Pedro,
just, some of us may not have caught all the points that you're making or the objections that you're bringing forth. Can you summarize it in sort of either a very short sentence or like bullet points so that
al-
Pedro can answer some specific points and maybe and broadly speaking, some people may have missed what the point you're making.
algunas personas no han captado
Yes.
del todo lo que ha pedido, lo que ha dicho Aaron, si lo puedes resumir.
So, in the past, we've always run our symbol through the Bible to see what it symbolizes.
En el pasado siempre hemos recorrido con los símbolos a lo largo de la Biblia para ver qué es lo que simbolizan.
When you did that with Biden, you kind of did it, but with a bit of a twist, but that's okay.
Cuando lo hiciste con Biden, más o menos lo hiciste con un pequeño giro, pero está bien.
But when you come to Kamala, you used a methodology never before used.
Pero cuando llegaste a Kamala, utilizaste una metodología nunca antes utilizada.
Instead of running anchors through the Bible to see what they represent,
En vez de dejar que dejar ver que las anclas te demuestren
you
lo que
said, let's look,
representan,
let's find something that looks like a boat and an anchor.
dijiste, vamos a buscar algo que se parezca a un bote y un ancla.
You said a lotus flower.
Dijiste que es de una flor de loto.
And then you say, then you look for the meaning of lotus in the modern world.
Y luego buscaste el significado de una flor de loto en el mundo moderno.
Does that make sense?
¿A ¿Eso tiene sentido?
Yes. Just quickly, because I need to choose translator. If not, wouldn't be able to listen.
Solo de un segundo si busco un traductor, así no podré ser capaz de escuchar.
Are you there, Elisa? Okay. Well, thank you for your question, Aaron.
Gracias por tu pregunta, Aaron.
First of all, I want to say that I'm open
Primero que nada, quiero decir que estoy abierto
to the possibility of finding symbols in a new way,
a la posibilidad de encontrar símbolos de cualquier manera,
even if it's something that has never been done before.
incluso si es algo que no se ha hecho previamente antes.
I want to be also honest. I didn't run the word anchors through the Bible as you suggested.
Quiero también ser sincero, no he recorrido con la palabra ancla a lo largo de la Biblia como has
So I
sugerido,
think I will have to catch up with that.
así que creo que voy a tener que actualizarme y realizar eso.
I also think that we tend to see too much emphasis in the name meanings.
También creo que damos demasiado énfasis
when
al
we
significado de las
should
palabras,
be focusing on the structure.
cuando deberíamos estar enfocándonos en la estructura.
So I could debate about the technicality if what I did with Kamala or Biden is correct.
Así que podríamos debatir sobre eh, lo técnico de si lo que hice con Biden y Kamala es correcto,
But what I feel I'm ready to defend
pero lo que creo que sí estoy listo para defender
is that in 2021 we have the anchors
es que en 2021 teníamos las
and
anclas
they stop the ship from crashing.
que detuvieron a la nave de su naufragio, de su choque,
Right when we have American democracy almost falling.
justo cuando teníamos a la democracia americana casi cayendo.
So even if we didn't have Biden or Kamala,
Incluso si no tuviéramos a Biden y Kamala,
I believe we still I would still arrive to the conclusion that it is a democratic presidency.
y de cualquier manera llegaría a la conclusión de que sería una presidencia
And the
democrática.
fact that anchors seem to be related to Biden in one way,
Luego el hecho de que las anclas estuvieran relacionadas con Biden de alguna manera,
or to Kamala in a sort of interesting imagery,
o con Kamala algún tipo de imagen interesante,
it kind of seems to be just a nice hint.
parece ser solamente una linda
But
pista.
even if you remove the names I just said,
Pero incluso si remueves los nombres, como ya he dicho,
the anchors would be a democratic presidency.
las anclas serían una presidencia democrática.
Pedro, could I just answer a follow-up question?
Yep.
Pero puedo hacer una pregunta de continuación.
Do you agree between the front and back anchors, you're using completely different symbols or applications for the same symbol?
¿Estás de acuerdo con que estás utilizando distintos símbolos, completamente distintos símbolos para aplicar para las anclas del frente y de la parte de atrás?
I think that's Aaron's point.
Creo que ese es el punto de Aaron.
So that in one place it is Biden and in the other is Kamala. That's the
No.
difference?
No,
De forma que un lado sería Biden y otro lado sería
Approach.
Kamala. ¿Esa es la diferencia o la aproximación?
the methodology for one set of anchors is one model, and for the other set of anchors, you're using a different methodology, and yet the symbol is the same.
La metodología para uno de los lados es una y la metodología para el otro es otra, y aún así el símbolo es el mismo.
His problem is you're using different methodology for the same symbol. That's the
Su,
crux of his point.
su problema es que estás utilizando diferentes metodologías para el mismo símbolo. Ese es el punto
I see,
principal
you see that. Okay.
de su
The
planteo.
second question
¿Puedes ver
then,
eso?
based
La
upon
segunda
what
pregunta
you
entonces,
said,
¿cuál es el problema con lo que dijiste?
if you take all the symbology of anchors out,
Si tomaras todos los símbolos de las anclas afuera,
so you no longer have Biden and you no longer have Camilla,
de forma de que tú ya no tuvieras más a Biden ni a Kamala,
you're saying you have the same conclusion.
tú dices que tienes la misma conclusión.
Is that correct?
Yes.
¿Es eso correcto? Sí.
Ariel,
Ok.
over to you.
Arián, vamos a ti.
Yes. Hi. Hi, Pedro.
Sí. Hola, ¿qué tal, Pedro?
this is a question I've asked you before,
Esta es una
and
pregunta
you've
que te hice
answered it
antes
as well.
y me respondiste también.
But a short introduction.
Una
Sorry,
pequeña
a short
introducción.
introduction to my question.
Una pequeña introducción a mi pregunta.
You mentioned in your study that
Tú mencionaste en tu estudio
that verse 30 is the Sunday law.
que que el versículo 30 es la ley dominical.
Because Ellen White says there, at the break of day, etc., etc.
Que quedas
Can I
al
stop
salir
you for a
del
moment?
sol,
Pedro, can you
etc.
show the whiteboard as
Detengo
Arian
un
is giving the
momento.
introduction so we can
Pero
see
puedes
the
mostrar
whiteboard of what
la
he's
pizarra,
referring to. You can
así
carry
podemos
on,
ver a
Arian.
qué se está refiriendo. Sí, sí.
Yes. Just a second.
You carry on, Arian, don't wait.
Continúa.
All right. So you're saying the Sunday law starts at verse 30?
Entonces dices que arranca la ley dominical en el versículo
So you
30.
didn't say it with these words, but my conclusion from what you said today was that the Sunday law is from verse 30 all the way to the end of the chapter, verse 44, 45.
No sé, no dijiste con estas palabras, pero si no entendí mal, sería desde el versículo 30 hasta el versículo 40, 45.
Is that correct? Do you see
40, 44.
30 to 44 as the Sunday law?
¿Sería correcto esto? 30 al 44 sería la ley dominical.
I see Sunday law being verse 41.
Yo veo la ley dominical siendo en el versículo 41.
I'm not listening to my translator
No estoy escuchando a mi traductor.
because if I need to switch back and forth, is it a possibility that I can see Elisa in the camera so I know when she stops?
Es posible que pueda ver a Elisa en su cámara,
Okay.
en la cámara sí puedo ver cuando ella deja de hablar.
Okay.
Ok,
So I believe
entonces,
Sunday law or shipwreck, it's verse 41.
yo creo que la ley dominical o el naufragio es el versículo 41.
But I suggested that shipwreck it's unavoidable from verse 30 when they lost the boat.
Pero sugerí que el naufragio es inevitable desde el versículo 30 cuando pierden
Then in
el bote,
verse
el
40,
esquife.
it's where the anchors are taken up.
Luego en el versículo 40
So
es
I would
cuando
say
las anclas son levantadas.
that
Por
in
lo tanto
verse
diría
40, clearly
que,
the ship hasn't crashed with it to the island.
que en el versículo 40
In
la
41 it does.
nave todavía no ha chocado contra la isla, en el 41 lo hace.
It's a decision that is made.
Do you have a
Yeah.
translator, Pedro?
Y en
Because
el versículo
my
40,
translator is running at the same time when you talk.
Elisa,
Sorry.
you're right. Elisa,
I
either
was-
he's not hearing you or you're going too fast. One
It's
of
my
the two.
fault. It's my fault. Sorry, Alyssa. I will go back a little bit.
voy a volver hacia atrás un poquito.
You can't hear her, or
The thing is that if I listen to her, I think I can listen to you.
El problema es que cuando te escucha ella no te puede escuchar a ti.
Yeah, but your translation silences him a little bit. So what I said is,
Entonces, lo que he dicho
okay,
es,
so I just said that verse 41 is shipwreck
es que el versículo 41 es el naufragio.
for that Sunday law. Then
Eh,
I said
antes de la
verse
ley
40
dominical.
is when those anchors are taken up.
Perdón, ahí es la ley dominical. Entonces después dije el versículo 40 es cuando se levantan las anclas.
Which I believe to be Biden's end of presidency.
Que lo que yo creo es el final de la presidencia de Biden.
Verse 30 will just be
Versículo 30 sería
the decision that made it inevitable to
la decisión que lo
shipwreck.
hizo inevitable. Y es inevitable el naufragio.
So if I'm forced to see the Sunday law in a period, I would choose
Yes, yes.
verse 30 as the beginning.
Si estoy forzado a ver la ley dominical como un periodo, sería el 27:30 como está el inicio.
But this doesn't deny the fact 41 it's when they crash. So that is Sunday law.
Este no niega que el 741 es cuando chocan, así que ahí sería la ley dominical.
so you're saying January 6th to January 20th, that's the period. And verse 30 is then January 6th.
Yes.
El siglo 30 sería el 6 de enero, ¿correcto? Y ese sería el periodo del 6 al 20. Sí.
Pedro, could you draw that on your board, please? The
Pedro,
verses and the events.
¿podrías dibujarlo en tu pizarra, los versos y los eventos?
Let me do it like this.
Sí, déjenme hacerlo de esta manera.
Okay. So my question
Ok,
is, or actually
entonces,
the question that I want to ask is,
mi pregunta que quiero hacerte es la siguiente.
when Elder Tess started on Acts 27,
Cuando la anciana Tess comenzó con Hechos 27,
she recognized Midnight Cry.
ella reconoció el clamor de medianoche.
That I think she recognized it first 27, 28.
Creo que ella lo reconoció primero como 27 y
And then she
28.
recognized Sunday Law, which was 40 and 41.
Y luego reconoció la ley dominical como 40 y 41.
One moment. Pedro, could you go to the bottom of your sheet and start clean so it's in order?
Pedro, ¿podrías ir al final de tu pizarra y limpiarla si está en orden?
So, and that was because Elder Tess then marked the 273 in the middle.
Entonces, luego allí Tess marca los 273 en el medio.
And that is verse 37.
Y esa es para el versículo 27.
And it was for her very important that this number 273 was marked in the middle between the Midnight Cry and the Sunday Law.
Y era para ella muy importante que este número, el 273, estuviera en el medio entre el clamor de medianoche y la ley dominical.
Because it's a symbol for the Levites in this time period of the harvest of the Levites.
Porque era importante para la cosecha de los levitas.
Also with her move to the story of Pyrrhus,
Y también con esta historia de Pirro,
she marks the 273 between Midnight Cry and Sunday Law.
ella marca a 273 entre el segundo clamor de medianoche y la ley dominical.
Application, verse 37 would be at the Sunday Law.
Y ahora, según tu aplicación, el versículo 27 sería la ley dominical.
What would be yours? Did you have thought about it, or?
Yeah, of course.
Before
¿Cuál es
you
tu
answer,
consideración de eso? ¿Cómo has
Aaron, can you
pensado?
just summarize what you're saying on that board work? What's the objection and the problem for you?
Antes de que contestes, Pedro, ¿podrías decir cuál es tu objeción y tu problema en resumen, Arian?
My problem is that Elder Tess marked verse 37 between Midnight Cry and Sunday Law.
Mi problema es que Tess marcó el siglo XXVII entre el clamor de medianoche y la ley
And that
dominical.
was very important because that was fundamental to her structure.
Y esto era muy importante porque era fundamental para esa estructura.
And I get what I understand from your presentation now is that verse 37 belongs to the Sunday Law.
Y lo que yo entiendo ahora es que el versículo 27 pertenece a la ley dominical.
And that doesn't seem in line with what Elder Tess said. So I'm wondering.
Perdón, 37. Y eso no parece alineado con lo que Tess dice.
Okay. So the beginning of my
On your
response.
Sorry,
is two
on your
questions.
board,
Oh, sorry.
you have
Bueno,
3032 slash 4041. Is
Yeah.
that verse? Go ahead.
Yeah, those are verses.
esos son
Is that
versículos.
verse 3241?
Y eso del 30 al 41.
That's part of Arian's question, I guess.
Eso es parte de la pregunta de Arian. Sí.
Okay, so in summary, What I said is verse 30 is in the year of the Sunday law, at least. But then when you continue reading,
Cuando
if
voy al versículo 30
chronologically,
veo que es por lo menos el año de la vida medical, pero cuando continúas leyendo,
this is the verse where we see the 273.
este es el versículo donde vemos el 273.
And so it seems like I jumped forward.
Entonces parece como un salto hacia adelante.
So my first answer would be a quick question.
Entonces mi primera respuesta sería una
Do you remember the
pregunta
portion
rápida.
of Elder Tess talking about that symbol? Do you remember what
¿Recuerdas
she
la
said?
porción en la que o sea, te está hablando acerca de ese símbolo? ¿Recuerdan lo que dice?
What did she say?
Can you
¿Qué es lo
answer
que
the
ella dijo?
questions, Pedro, not Arian?
Okay, so I just want to make sure that he
Solo
had
quería
time to watch that.
asegurarme
So
de
there's a
que
portion
podido ver eso. Hay una
where
porción
Elder Tess is talking about this verse
donde la Senates está hablando acerca de este versículo
in Acts 27,
en Hechos 27,
which we understand the 273 to be a symbol of concord.
que vemos a la 273 como ser un símbolo de Concord.
And she said pretty much the following.
Y ella dijo prácticamente lo siguiente.
273, the verse, is not
273,
essentially a
el
waymark.
versículo, no es esencialmente un hito.
And her words were, she said, it's
palabras para ella fue,
representing the whole period.
representa a todo el periodo.
The reason I understand what she's saying
La razón por la que entiendo lo que ella está diciendo
is because in the line of Acts 27,
es porque en la línea de Hechos 27,
this is Exeter
esto es Exeter
and this is the shut door.
y esta es la puerta cerrada.
But 273, it's Concord,
Pero 273 es Concord,
but not Concord in Acts 27.
pero no es Concord en Hechos 27.
It's going to be Concord in a line that she's going to connect.
Va a ser Concord en una línea que ella iba a conectar.
So she would put 273 here.
Entonces ella pondría los 273 aquí.
We cannot have a Concord after an Exeter.
No podemos tener un Concord después de un Exeter.
So the way that I see why I jumped the chronological order
Entonces la forma en que lo veo, porque salté en un orden cronológico,
it's based on the themes.
está basado en los temas.
You see that in Acts 27, there's verses that talk about interactions within the ship,
Veo que en Hechos 27 hay versos que hablan acerca de las interacciones con la nave.
certain things that people do and say,
Hay ciertas cosas que las personas hacen y dicen,
and then there's the things that are related strictly to the ship.
y luego hay cosas que están relacionadas directamente con la nave.
My answer would be that in
Mi
the
respuesta sería
application,
que en la aplicación,
after verse 30,
después del verso 30,
which would be verse 31 to 39,
que serían versículos 31 al 39,
actually 38,
perdón, hasta el
31 to
38,
38. This is a parenthesis
esto sería un paréntesis,
talking about the experience of the people within the ship
hablando de la experiencia de las personas adentro de la nave,
and not about the ship itself.
y no acerca de la nave en sí misma.
That's the way I see it.
Esta es la forma en que yo lo veo.
Can I give a short follow-up response slash question?
¿Puedo dar una continuación a esa
Yes.
respuesta o una
So-
pregunta?
So let's say that is that's okay. So you say basically you're saying in
Vamos a decir que eso está
X27,
bien.
273 is not a waymark, but it
Entonces,
represents the whole period.
Está diciendo que 273 no es un hito, sino que es todo el periodo.
And Elder Tess said that.
Sí, y la anciana
I
Tess lo
agree.
dijo. Estoy de acuerdo.
Okay, and only when you bring it to the story of Pyrrhus, it becomes a waymark.
Exactly.
Cuando lo lleva a la historia de Pirro, se convierte en un hito. Exacto.
But then still, I would not. If verse 37 is a symbol
Pero
Well,
entonces,
if verse 37 is the Sunday law, then I would say
si
it's a symbol for the Sunday law and not for the whole period.
Hechos 27 es un símbolo de la ley dominical. Sería un símbolo de un punto en la ley dominical, no todo el periodo.
But if you see it as a parenthesis,
Pero si
it's
lees
not
como un
talking about the
paréntesis,
sheep.
lo que no está hablando acerca de la nave.
Verse 31
Okay.
to 38, it's Paul
Versículos
breaking
31 al
bread with the
38
people,
es Pablo compartiendo pan con la gente, con el pueblo,
encouraging them
eh,
and preparing them for what they have to do.
animándolos y preparándolos para lo que tienen que hacer.
I don't have an
Pedro,
application for what that is.
is verse 31
Pedro,
to verse
versículo 31
38 the
al versículo
Sunday law
38
history or before the Sunday law history?
es la historia
Sorry,
de la ley
I
dominical o
said
antes de la
31.
historia de la ley dominical. Ok, he dicho 31.
I meant 33, not 31, sorry. 30 to 32, it's still January 2025, according to me.
El 30 al 32 sería enero de 2025 según yo.
Sorry for the confusion. So
On
here's
your-
where Paul
On
Perdón,
your
perdón.
board,
speaking with the people.
if you
Yo-
move this,
en tu
if you
pizarra.
move the Bible, just put the verses where you believe they go.
Pon
From
simplemente los
verse
versículos donde
30
crees que van.
to verse 44.
Del versículo 30 al 44.
So I believe it would be the following.
Creo que
This
sería
wire
de la
is
siguiente manera.
strange. Sorry about that.
Es extraño, lo siento por eso.
What I believe is
Lo que yo creo es
verses 33 to 39, we just confirmed.
versículos 37 al 39, que está
No,
confirmado,
38
perdón, 38,
is speaking about the whole period.
está hablando de todo el periodo.
And I'm taking
33
out
to
30.
33 to 38 is pre-Sunday law.
El de 3 al 38 es previo a la ley dominical.
Yeah, the whole period in between.
Sí, todo el periodo
Pre-Sunday
entre
law.
medio. Previo a la ley dominical.
Pre-Sunday law, yes?
Yes.
Previo a la ley dominical,
And
sí.
30 to
Sí.
32 is Sunday law, and 39 to 41 is Sunday law.
30 al 32 sería ley dominical y 39 al 41 es ley dominical.
Yes.
If I ask on Arian's behalf, what gives you the license to cut those 5 or 6 verses and move them?
Si puedo pedirte en nombre de Daniel, ¿qué te da la licencia para cortar esos versículos y correrlos del lugar?
So the only reason I have,
Entonces, la única razón
besides
por la que tengo
Elder Test saying that verse 37 represents the whole period,
es la representación de la ancianatez diciendo que representa todo el periodo y no un hito.
I would just say that these verses are not talking
Diría-
about the experience of the sheep. So it's
Diría que no
making,
están hablando de la experiencia de la nave,
I believe, is expanding about the experience of the people within the sheep
que
between
está
this
hablando,
period.
expandiendo la
I
experiencia
don't have a
de
good
la
defense.
nave durante este periodo. No tengo una buena defensa.
You can have
I
a
don't have any
follow-up question.
stronger evidence for that than what I just said. That's how
No
I
puedo
see it.
proveer mayor evidencia acerca de esto, es como lo veo.
So you're saying
¿Me estás
33 to
diciendo
38 is pre-Sunday law because Elder Tess said so,
que de 3 al
and
38 es previo a la ley dominical porque el Senates lo dice?
and 30 to 32 is Sunday law because
Y 30
you
al 32
see symbology there.
es la ley dominical porque ve simbología allí.
So I would say that again. Sunday law, it's
Lo
41.
diré nuevamente, que la ley dominical es el
But I believe
versículo
30
41.
to 32 is 20 to 35, which is in the year, even the same month.
Diría que es en 2025 el 30 al 32, que es en el mismo mes.
Do you have a follow-up point, Arian?
No, that was it. Thank you. I have one, but that's maybe for the next round.
Blessing?
Blessing.
Hi, Pedro, can you hear me?
Hear you well.
Hola Pedro, ¿puedes escucharme?
All right.
Te escucho bien.
So the question I want to ask you right now
La pregunta que quiero hacerte ahora mismo
is related to the application you made to the third ship in Acts 28.
es relacionada con la pregunta, con la aplicación que hiciste de la tercera nave en Hechos 28.
So generally we understand as a movement
Generalmente entendemos como movimiento
that a way to confirm that a model is correct
que la forma en que confrontamos que un modelo sea correcto
is if you can take an unrelated story or model and show the same story or the
es decir,
same structure.
si puedes tomar una historia relacionada y ver que encaje en la misma estructura.
So an example
Entonces, un ejemplo
is the parable of Matthew 13, the wheat and the tares.
es la parábola de Mateo 13 del trigo y la cizaña.
Shows a similar pattern to the three angels' messages in Revelation 40.
Muestra un patrón similar al de los tres ángeles en Apocalipsis 13.
There are two unrelated stories,
Hay dos historias no relacionadas,
but they bring you to a similar conclusion.
pero llegan a una conclusión similar.
When it comes to how events play out, the structure of the event.
Por la forma en que llegan a los eventos, la estructura de los eventos.
So you can have confidence that it's correct.
Entonces puedes tener confianza de que no se va a romper.
So what Daniel and Revelation give to us is a structure about the time of the end, which begins in 1798 and
Lo que nos
extends to the
dan
second advent.
Daniel de Apocalipsis es una estructura del tiempo del fin que arranca en 1798 y se extiende hasta la segunda venida.
And particularly Revelation 12 to 19
Y particularmente Apocalipsis 12 al 19
uh, tells many stories, but one of them is the role of the United States, and it extends it from 1798 to the second advent.
cuenta de la historia de los Estados Unidos y la extiende desde 1798 hasta la segunda venida.
The parable of Matthew 25 is particularly Adventism's parable. It
La
explains the
parábola
experience of the Adventist people.
de Mateo 25 particularmente explica la experiencia del pueblo adventista.
And when you look at it, it begins in 1798 and extends to the close of probation, second advent time period as well.
Y como cuando vemos, comienza en 1798 y se extiende hasta el cierre de la Puerta de Gracia. Es una venida.
So these were truths that were established by our Alpha history. It's not something that we had to figure out.
Entonces, estas son verdades que fueron establecidas por nuestra historia alfa, no es algo que nosotros debamos comprender o analizar o descubrir.
Then now the test came and
Luego
did
llegó
the
el anciano
study of
Tess
Acts 26 to 28.
y hizo un estudio de Hechos 26 al 28.
She spoke about Paul interacting with the church, the head of the Jewish church, and the head of the Roman state.
Hablan acerca de Pablo, hablando a la cabeza de la iglesia y luego también del Estado romano.
And showed how both entities, both institutions rejected the truth.
Mostró cómo Ambas instituciones rechazaron la verdad, la iglesia judía y el Estado romano.
And then she went to chapter 27
Y luego va a Hechos 27
and looked at the first ship, the ship of Adramyttium, and said, the name of that ship, which means I shall abide in death, corresponds to the experience that the church and the state had had in the previous chapter.
y mira a la nave de la Mitena, que su nombre significa permanecer en la muerte, y muestra cómo la experiencia no corresponde con la experiencia previa, la experiencia del grupo.
So I'm not getting into all the details, but she then
Entonces,
used this to basically use the ship to represent the experience of the church and the state, the two institutions.
entonces no entrar en esto, pero básicamente utiliza la nave para exponer las experiencias de estas dos instituciones.
And if you look at the first ship, she marked it from 1989 to the Sunday law.
Y si miramos las experiencias, ella lo marca de 1989 hasta la
Which
ley
is the history
dominical,
of Daniel 11, verse 40, part B.
que es básicamente Daniel 11:40 parte B.
And the theme of Daniel 11, 40, part B
Y el tema de Daniel 11:40 parte B
in a simple form is the rise of the king of the north or the rise of the seventh kingdom of Bible prophecy.
es el alzamiento del rey del norte o del séptimo reino de la profecía bíblica.
And she shows how that model is confirmed by that first ship.
Y muestra cómo este modelo es confirmado por esta primera nave.
Then we move to the second ship because when that ship stopped, Paul and the other occupants had to move into a new ship.
Luego van a la segunda nave, porque cuando esta nave se destruye tienen que ir a la segunda nave.
And she basically says it represents both the church and the state again.
Ella dice básicamente que
Connecting
representa
link is the people that were in the ship.
a la iglesia y el Estado, y el link que los conecta es las personas que están en la nave.
But the theme of this second ship is different
Pero el tema de esta segunda nave es diferente,
because the name is different
porque el nombre es diferente
Lessing, if you can go a
and
little
the
bit,
history is different.
if you can go a
y la
little bit
historia es
faster,
diferente.
otherwise we'll run out of time.
Okay.
No sé si puedes ir más rápido.
Okay. So I was saying the name is different and the history is different.
Entonces estaba diciendo que el nombre es diferente y la historia es diferente.
So considering the history, she then extended the ship back to 1798, like you did. Alexandria goes back to 1798. That's where it
Ella
begins
extendió
its journey.
justamente la nave argentina desde 1798, que es donde comienza su viaje.
And then she went further to look into the history and said ships of Alexandria would transport grain to the Roman Empire from Alexandria in Egypt all the way to Italy, and the base was Puteoli.
Y habla acerca de cómo estos van desde Alejandría a Malta y luego van hasta la región de Puteoli.
So even though the second ship was wrecked,
Entonces, a pesar de que la segunda nave naufragó,
when the third ship came, she made it a continuation of the second ship because it's the same theme.
cuando llegó la tercera nave, hace la continuación de la segunda porque es el mismo tema.
And she applied that ship from the close of probation to the second advent.
Y ella aplicó esta nave desde el cierre de Puerta de Gracia hasta la segunda venida.
And that seems to confirm models we already have about the role of the United States in Adventism extending from 1798 to the second advent.
Y esto parece confirmar el rol de los Estados Unidos y el adventismo desde 1798 hasta la segunda venida.
So my question is, rule number 4 of Miller's rule says we should bring all the information we have on a subject before we form a theory or make an application.
Entonces, mi pregunta dice que la regla número 4 de Miller dice que deberíamos reunir toda la información que tenemos sobre un tema antes de hacer una aplicación.
So the first part of my question is, did you consider that application that Elder Tess made? And the second part is, how do you then justify, how do you transition from what she put in place to the application you made?
Mi pregunta primera sería si consideraste esto y segundo, ¿cómo justificas esto a la transición con la que hiciste?
Okay, so I will just summarize Blessing's question.
Voy a simplemente primero resumir la pregunta de
It's
Blessing.
about study of Elder Tess where she put the third ship forward in the line.
Está hablando de un estudio que National Test hizo en el cual puso a la tercera nave más adelante en la línea,
Specifically from the close of probation to the second advent.
específicamente del cierre de la puerta de gracia a la segunda venida.
I believe it was in 2020, around that
Creo
time.
creo que fue en 2020
The
o
question is
por ese
how
tiempo.
then I'm using the same ship and applying it to a different
Entonces
part
la
of the
pregunta
line.
es, ¿por qué estoy utilizando la misma nave y la estoy aplicando a otra parte de la línea?
Is that right?
¿Es eso correcto?
Not quite. It's did you consider the application that she made?
No,
And then
si consideras la
how do you
aplicación
move
que
from that
hiciste
known to a new application?
y cómo vas de esa anterior a esta nueva aplicación.
Because
Before you answer that, Pedro,
Antes de que respondas a eso, Pedro,
Blessing, do you see what he has done
Blessing, ¿ves lo que él ha hecho
and you disagree with what he's done?
y estás en desacuerdo con lo que hizo?
I disagree with it because I think it's the same theme. So it's a continuation, not a new story.
Estoy en desacuerdo porque veo que es un mismo tema, entonces creo que es una continuación, no una nueva historia.
Is that the only problem that you see?
¿Ese es el único problema que tú ves?
No, it's not the only problem, but
Okay.
No, no es el
Yeah.
único problema.
Pedro, if you carry on.
Pedro, ¿puedes continuar?
So I will skip the part of the question that says if either I knew about application before I did this.
Voy a saltar la parte de si sabía de esta aplicación previamente antes de hacer esto.
And I want to stick to the theme as Blessing said.
Y quiero mantenerme en el tema, como Blessing dijo.
And my answer would be, I believe Elder Tess and I made a different application of this ship.
Y mi respuesta sería que tanto la zona test y yo tenemos aplicaciones distintas
It's not
a la
only that
aplicación de esta nave.
a symbol can have more than one meaning,
Veo que es posible que pueda tener más de un significado,
but I believe I stick to the actual theme of this chapter,
y pero creo que se mantiene al
which is the
tema
institution.
establecido del capítulo, que es la institución.
And I believe the institution begins in 1798
Y creo que la institución comienza en 1798
and it ends as Sunday law.
y termina en la ley dominical.
And I don't disagree with Elder Test application. I just believe it's another application.
Y no estoy en desacuerdo con la aplicación de la zona test, solo creo que es otra aplicación
Of the same ship.
del mismo asunto.
Blessing, can you do that? A
Blessing,
different
¿puedes hacer eso?
application of the same ship.
¿Tener una aplicación distinta de la misma nave?
I don't think so.
Okay. No, you
No lo
say
creo.
no.
Ok, tú dices que no.
Pedro?
I believe in we can do it.
Yo creo que sí podemos hacerlo.
Blessing, why do you say we cannot do that?
Blessing, ¿por qué dices que no podemos hacer eso?
I'm saying it can't be done in this context
Estoy
because
diciendo que no puede ser hecho en este contexto.
the basis of the applications is the themes of the ships.
Porque la razón de las aplicaciones es la temática de las naves.
You actually have two different ships.
Tú, de hecho, tienes dos naves distintas.
One is Adramitium, which is one theme. The other is Alexandria, which is another theme.
Una es Adramitena, que es un tema, y otro es Alejandrina, que es otro tema.
And the one of Alexandria is not split into two themes.
Y la nave alejandrina no está dividida en dos temas.
Well, what I'm
It's a
saying is
continuation of the same theme.
I'm
Es
going
una
to move
continuación del
on.
mismo tema. Quiero avanzar.
I'm going to move on to Curtis. I think you've made your point.
Quiero moverme a Curtis, creo que has hecho tu punto.
Um, um, I'm working on the assumption, Pedro, that you, in the ship of Alexandria and Adramyttium, not the third one you discussed, you're developing upon the study that Aldertest did on Acts 27.
Partiendo de la base de la cual hablaste sobre Hechos
Could you,
27.
could you put your video on, please?
¿Puedes poner tu video
It's
encendido,
live,
por
it's
favor? El mío está prendido.
And you're not necessarily making a different application from what she's done.
Creo que no estás haciendo una aplicación diferente de lo que ella ha hecho.
So that being said, when
Una vez
we
dicho eso,
consider symbols being used within a story or a parable,
cuando encontramos símbolos siendo utilizados dentro de una historia o de una parábola,
as you've pointed out, we often use symbols differently, but that's dependent on the story that you're telling.
como has señalado, utilizamos símbolos de manera diferente, pero eso depende de la historia que estamos contando.
So, for instance, we use the symbol of locusts in to represent the armies of Rome, but in another story, we use the symbol of locusts to represent radical Islam.
Por ejemplo, utilizamos el tema de las langostas para hacer los ejércitos de Roma, pero en otros casos utilizamos también para hablar del Islam radical.
Ellen White will take one parable and make a different application of the field in the wheat and tares that Jesus makes, but she's telling a different story.
Ellen White toma la parábola del trigo y la cizaña y del campo y hace una aplicación distinta a la que Jesús hizo, diciendo otra historia.
So, if you are telling the same story as has been told by Elder Tess in Acts 27,
Entonces, si tú estás contando la misma historia que la anciana Tess en Hechos 27,
when you get to verse 37 of Acts 27,
cuando llegas al versículo 37 de Hechos 27,
and we identify this number 273 based on that number minus the three Paul, Aristarchus, and Luke.
identificamos a este número como los 173, que son los 276 menos Pablo, Lucas y, si no me equivoco, era Silas.
That gets associated with the symbol of Levites
Eso está asociado con el símbolo de los levitas,
because of several proofs of evidence. One being in Numbers, where the number of priests needed to be made up.
y esto se encuentra relacionado con la cantidad de levitas que deberían estar ahí.
So
Sacerdotes levitas.
this symbol is tied to Levites in
Este
previous
símbolo
studies of Acts 27.
está unido con esto y con varios otros símbolos de Hechos 27.
But you've used the symbol of the people on the ship as Congress.
eh, y está relacionada la nave con el Congreso. Perdón, corriger
In the
Aristarco.
same story.
En la misma historia.
And my question is, do you have
Mi pregunta
precedent
es,
to do that type of methodology?
¿tienes un precedente para hacer este tipo de metodología?
And if so, what is that precedent? Because
Y si es
one
así,
of
¿cuál
the
es el
key
precedente?
rules that we use to establish what we believe
Porque una de las reglas claves que establecemos para poner lo que creemos
is this idea of threading, telling a consistent story in the story you're telling.
es esta idea de atar, de ir tejiendo, de ir armando una historia consistente.
Yeah, does my question make sense?
Bien, esa es mi pregunta.
can
¿Tiene
you-
sentido?
in a
I can,
nutshell,
if I can
tell me the question.
summarize,
Oh yeah, summarize, please.
273 is a symbol of the church, people in the church.
El 173 es un símbolo de la iglesia, personas en la iglesia.
And Pedro is using those same people as a symbol of Congress.
Y Pedro está usando ese mismo número como un símbolo del Congreso.
Is that your question?
¿Es esa tu pregunta?
Yeah.
Sí.
How can you do that, Pedro? That's his question.
¿Cómo puedes hacer eso, Pedro? Esa es su pregunta.
So let me quickly go to. I don't know if I can paste this. Oh, I can take it like this.
Vamos a ir aquí a ver si
So the beginning of
encuentro
my
esto aquí.
answer is
Comenzaría
the ship is two
respondiendo a esto.
institutions, not only one.
La nave son dos instituciones, no solo una.
The 273 is talking
Los-
about people in the SDA ship, if we can say that.
Los 163 están hablando de personas en la iglesia adventista del séptimo día, si podemos referirnos de esa manera.
But I don't think we have considered that it's talking about the church, not about the
creo-
US institution.
Creo que no hemos considerado que habla acerca de la iglesia, no de la institución política.
So I will use this. I haven't presented this
Pero se podría mostrar esto. No he
because I'm still
presentado
working
esto
it out.
porque todavía estoy trabajándolo.
But if we're saying that Paul, this is Paul,
Pero estamos
And-
diciendo que Pablo,
we're saying that he represents the movement.
estamos diciendo que él representa el movimiento.
I'm not able to. So I hope you can see because I cannot write with the pen here. I don't know why.
Espero que puedan ver, porque
So
no puedo
if
escribir con la
Paul
idioma aquí
is
arriba.
the movement,
El pen. Si Pablo es el
the
movimiento,
question is, can Paul be the movement to the USA institution as well?
¿puede Pablo ser el movimiento para en los Estados Unidos
This is
también?
kind of like internal, external type of thing.
Creo que esto es algo, un tipo de cosa interna y externa.
I agree with the application. Yes, the people in the ship
De
are
acuerdo con la aplicación, sí.
Levites.
Las personas de la nave son levitas.
Besides Aristarchus and Luke and Paul,
Más allá de Pablo, Lucas y Aristarco.
but that doesn't tell us what they are for the USA institution.
Pero eso no significa lo que ellos son para la institución de los Estados Unidos.
So when I make the sailors Congress,
Entonces, cuando dije que los marineros eran el Congreso,
I was forced to find, well, what are the other people in the ship?
me vi forzado a tratar de encontrar qué eran las otras personas
Because if
en la
you read
nave.
this quote that I have just in here,
Could I stop you for a moment, Pedro?
yeah,
¿Puedo detenerte por un momento, Pedro?
Curtis?
Curtis,
you understand his logic?
¿entiendes su lógica?
Two ships,
Uh,
internal, external.
Dos naves internas y externas,
Therefore, two groups of people, internal, external.
por lo tanto, dos grupos de personas, interna y externa.
That's his license.
I have follow-up. Sure, I
Tengo
have a
licencia.
follow-up question, but
Tengo una
I
pregunta
think I should wait
de
for
continuación
to finish that.
que debería
Do
hacer.
you agree with do you agree with his license to do that?
¿Estás de acuerdo con su licencia para hacerlo?
No. And
No.
Just tell us simply
There-
why you don't.
Entonces, dinos simplemente por qué no.
because when we look at the people in the ship, we look at their
Cuando vemos a las personas
relationship
en la
with that
nave,
institution.
vemos también su relación con esa institución.
So, for instance, we point out that Paul takes charge of the ship and now becomes the leadership of that ship.
Por ejemplo, vemos que Pablo es parte de la nave y se convierte en líder de esa nave tomando el cargo, el mando de esa nave,
Between Panium and the Sunday Law.
entre Pañi y la ley dominical.
So, at each of these different waymarks, I think we should be telling the same story at each of those waymarks and how this movement interacts with both of those institutions.
En todos los hitos tendríamos que ver una estructura, una historia similar que se repita y que muestre la relación entre el movimiento de todas estas
In the
instituciones,
story of Acts 27, at
las
least.
personas y las instituciones en la historia de Hechos 27.
So
my
your
response is,
argument is that there's two ships,
Entonces tu
internal,
argumento es que
external,
hay dos naves, interna y externa,
but only one group of people,
pero solo un grupo de personas
which are internal
que son internas, que es interna,
or church,
o iglesia,
and you say that church has to interact externally and internally.
que esa iglesia tiene que interactuar interna y externamente.
In symbology, yes.
En simbología sí.
Pedro?
Pedro,
so I don't know how can we say this movement became leader of the USA institution.
entonces no sé cómo podríamos decir que este movimiento se convirtió en líderes
I
de la
can see it
institución
spiritually
de los Estados
for
Unidos.
the SDA movement.
Puedo verlo espiritualmente para el
We are
movimiento
the
del
leaders of that
adventismo.
movement.
Somos los líderes de ese movimiento.
But I don't see us interacting with the external and
Pero no
not
nos
we
veo
are
interactuando con lo externo.
sorry. So I don't see us not either interacting or being the leaders of the other portion of the coin, which
No
is
nos
the
veo
USA institution.
interactuando o siendo líderes de la otra porción de la moneda, que es la institución de los Estados Unidos.
That's
I
why
want to
I
move
believe
on.
Paul represents the press.
Por eso pensaba que Pablo representaba a la prensa.
I want to move on to Janice now.
Quiero moverme a Janice ahora.
I know you had a follow-up question, but if there's time, we can do that. But I think we understand what the disagreement is.
Eh, Sé que tenías una pregunta para continuar, pero creo que entendemos cuál es la idea de tu desacuerdo.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hola, ¿puedes
Very
escucharme?
well.
Muy bien, sí.
Okay. The question I want to ask is not directly connected to what you taught or
Bien.
to the content of your study.
La pregunta que quiero hacer no está relacionada con lo que has enseñado o con el contenido de tu estudio.
It's a more general question.
Es una pregunta más general.
So, the election is in 3 days,
Entonces, la elección es en 3 días
and let's say Kamala Harris wins.
y digamos que Kamala Harris wins.
Would
Gana.
you
Perdón.
see that as a confirmation to the truthfulness of your study?
¿Verías esto como una confirmación de la veracidad de tu estudio?
Of your whole study and its methodology?
De todo tu estudio y de su metodología?
And the other way around,
Y
if
de la
she
otra manera,
loses,
si ella pierde,
does that mean that your interpretation was wrong and all of your study was wrong?
eso significaría que si ella perdiera, eso significaría que todo tu estudio estaría equivocado y cambia su metodología.
So I was wondering, how do you see that, and how would you like the movement to see that?
Quería preguntarte cómo veías eso y cómo quisieras que el movimiento viera eso.
Or how would you like the movement to react or respond to any
O
outcome?
cómo quisieras que el movimiento viera o respondiera a cualquier resultado.
Thank you for the question.
Gracias por la pregunta.
So if we see Kamala wins the election,
Si vemos que Kamala gana la
it's going to
elección,
take some days to know that.
creo que van a pasar varios días hasta saber eso.
That wouldn't still confirm what I understand.
Eso aún no confirmaría lo que yo entiendo.
The other piece of the story is that even winning, she doesn't become president.
Hay otras piezas en la historia en la cual incluso ganando ella no se convierte en presidente.
I believe we should be able to see that conclusion around January 6th, January 20th.
Yo creo que deberíamos ver esa conclusión recién para el 6 de enero, o entre el
So
6 y
if
el
she
20 de enero.
wins and then she doesn't become president,
Entonces, si ella gana y después no se vuelve presidente,
I would consider the study to be correct.
yo consideraría el estudio estar correcto.
Now, if we come to a 2016 scenario
Ahora, si llegáramos a un escenario del 2016, similar al 2016,
where Trump won the election,
donde Trump ganó la elección,
doesn't matter that he lost the popular vote,
no importa que haya perdido el voto popular,
I would say that my application is wrong.
diría que mi aplicación está equivocada.
Did I answer?
¿Le respondió tu pregunta?
Yes.
Sí,
Thank you.
I just want to clarify, Pedro.
Yep.
solo quiero clarificar, Pedro.
If she wins the election,
Si ella gana la elección,
you won't know until January if the prediction is correct.
no sabrás hasta enero si la predicción es correcta.
Exactly, because if she becomes
Yes,
president,
that's fine. Yeah.
the study is wrong.
Yes. If she loses,
Si ella pierde,
Janice's question was, is the whole study wrong?
la pregunta de Janice es si todo el estudio estaría equivocado.
I cannot say which part of the study is going to be wrong. Certainly, verse 30.
No sé exactamente qué parte del estudio estaría equivocado. Ciertamente el versículo 30
It could be the whole thing,
podría ser la
or just
totalidad
portions of it.
o
have
unas
to work it
porciones. Tendría que trabajarlo.
The reason why I wanted to double check that
La razón por la que querías que hagas un chequeo doble de eso
is I think it was Aaron's question about the anchors.
es, creo que esa pregunta de Aaron acerca de las
You
anclas.
said the study stands up if you take Biden and Kamala out of the story.
Y dijiste que el estudio se mantenía firme si sacabas a Kamala y a Biden de la historia.
And I think Janice has asked almost the same question as Aaron.
Y creo que Janice ha hecho más o menos la misma pregunta que Aaron.
And I think you've said if she loses,
Pero creo que
the
ella ha dicho que si
prediction
pierde,
fails.
la elección falla.
If she loses, I think my prediction fails.
Si ella pierde, creo que mi elección falla. Que mi predicción falla.
Yes, I understand that here,
Sí, ¿entiendes aquí?
but when Aaron asked a similar question
Pero cuando Aaron hizo una pregunta similar,
based upon methodology,
basado en metodología,
you said the study isn't dependent upon Biden and Camilla application to anchors.
dijiste que no, el estudio no depende de la aplicación de Biden y Kamala como anclas.
Which would mean that she doesn't have to be part of the story.
Lo que significa que ella no necesita ser parte de la historia.
And you've just said that she has to be part of the story.
Y acabas de decir que debe ser parte de la historia.
Can
So
I just ask something?
Yeah, go ahead.
¿Puedo preguntar algo?
Didn't you
Sí,
mean
adelante.
that the names, the meanings of the names, the study doesn't depend on the meanings of the names? That's how
No,
I understood it.
¿No quisiste decir que el estudio no depende de los significados de los nombres? Sí,
Yes.
sí.
So answering Elder Parminder,
Entonces, respondiendo al señor Parminder,
even if anchors do not represent a specific person like Kamala or Biden,
incluso si las anclas no representan a personas específicas como Kamala,
my current position is that those anchors represent a democratic presidency.
mi posición actual representan a una presidencia democrática.
If these, if the front runners, whoever that is, we know it's Kamala, is not
Si
certified,
los que están corriendo por delante, sabemos que este momento es Kamala, no son certificados,
but she actually won the election,
pero ella de hecho ganara las elecciones,
I think the interpretation would be still the same.
creo que la interpretación sería aún la misma.
Thank you.
Gracias.
The next person is
La siguiente persona es
Justina.
Justina.
Thank you, Janice.
¿Qué hace Janice?
Hi, Pedro.
Hola, Pedro.
My question is on the sounding of the fathoms.
Mi pregunta es... No se escucha la última parte.
So when you placed the 20th fathom on 2021,
Cuando hablaste de 2021,
and then at shipwreck, you said there were 0 fathoms.
y luego el naufragio,
because you counted down 15, 10, and 5.
Acerca de la brasa, cuando hablaste de que te llegan a 2025,
And then when you put dates to
con
those,
cero brasas.
are we supposed to view them as waymarks?
Cuando pones fechas, suelo verlos automáticamente como hitos.
If so, can
Sí,
we
así.
have
Podríamos tener.
3 waymarks?
Podríamos tener 3 hitos.
Am I losing Justina? Is it just me?
Estoy perdiendo a
Yes.
Yesenia, soy solamente yo.
Okay.
Her audio seems to be working.
Sí, su audio parece estar funcionando.
If you can answer what she said so far.
¿Has
Did you just
respondido lo
return?
que
Justina, you said if I can see 3 waymarks in between, what else?
Yesenia dijiste que se podía haber 3 hitos entre medio? ¿Qué más?
So my question is, between 2021 and 2025, you marked 20, 22,
Mi pregunta es
23, and 24.
que
Yes, the
entre
sound
22,
wave.
21 y 25 marcaste 22, 23, 24.
So are you making them waymarks? Are we supposed to view it as expensive with 3 waymarks in between?
Lo estoy marcando como si fueran hitos, como si fueran 3 hitos.
So my answer is that they are not waymarks, but it is a
Mi
symbolic representation
mi respuesta es que no son
of the
hitos,
calculation of time.
pero es una representación simbólica del cálculo del tiempo.
But they're not waymarks.
Pero no son hitos.
But when you put dates to them, what are you making out of that? Maybe.
Yeah, so it's to visually see what the years are.
Era para
that
una
we're
representación
going
visual
through
del espacio entre los
until
años, de lo que iba
2025.
pasando hasta
That's why I put it
2025.
there, just to visually see it.
Era
They're no
simplemente
waymarks.
puse ahí para verlos visualmente, pero no son hitos.
Yes.
That's the end of my question.
Ese es el
Oh,
final de mi
thank you,
pregunta.
Justina.
Gracias, Justina.
Thank you. Catherine?
Catherine,
Hello.
hola.
The sequence, it's again to do with the fathoms.
La secuencia otra vez, la pregunta otra vez tiene que ver con las brasas.
The sequence in Acts 27 is as follows.
La secuencia en Hechos 27 es como la que sigue.
20 fathoms was measured, which you applied as 2021.
20 brasas fueron medidas, que es la que tú aplicaste como 2021.
15 fathoms was measured, which you applied as 2022.
15 brasas fueron medidas, las que tú marcaste como 2022.
And then the dropping of 4 anchors, which you applied as 4 years of Biden-Harris.
Y luego se pusieron las 4 brasas, que es la que tú marcaste como los 4 años de Biden-Harris.
So the dropping of the anchors comes after the symbol for 2022, not before it.
Entonces, la colocación de las 4 anclas sucede antes de la medición perdón, después de la medición de las 15 brasas, no antes.
After the symbol of 2022.
Hacia el símbolo del 2022.
Yeah, you've applied it to 2021.
Aún así, la aplicaste en 2021.
So there is an issue with the sequencing that I can see.
Entonces hay un asunto con la secuencia que puedo ver.
And I wonder how you can explain why you would apply it to 2021.
Y quisiera saber cómo aplicas entonces a 2021.
So what I understand is that the measurement
Entonces, Lo que
both
entiendo
took
es que
place
la
in
medida
2021.
son ambas colocadas en 2021.
And they represent a time element.
Ellos representan un elemento de tiempo.
But I'm placing a symbolic layout that we can take from those two numbers.
Pero estoy viendo una
So I
demostración
know that
simbólica
may
de
seem
cómo
as
se ven los
if I'm
números.
saying
Pero por donde sé que puede parecer que estoy diciendo,
they measure here 2021,
ellos midieron aquí
and then
2021
they measure here in 2022.
y luego midieron aquí en 2022.
But what I understand is that both measurements
Pero-
actually took place in 2021.
Pero lo que entiendo es que ambas medidas tomaron lugar en 2021.
But I'm taking those two numbers spiritually,
Estoy tomando esos dos
setting
números
a
espiritualmente para desarrollar, para describir,
and they're taking me to 2025.
y me llevan a 2025.
So I know it is not accurate, but I believe it's just symbolic.
Así que sé que no es preciso, creo que es simbólico.
I don't need to strictly see, oh, the second measurement happened in the year 22. That's not how I see it.
No necesito ver estrictamente que la segunda medida ocurre en el año 2022. No es como lo veo.
Do you have a response, Catherine?
¿Tienes una respuesta, Catherine?
For what reason would you place the 4 anchors at 2021 if it's not the sequence?
¿Por qué razón pondrías las anclas en 2021 si no es por la secuencia?
Because I still believe that both measurements, they did happen in 2021.
Porque creo que aún así, si las dos mediciones sucedieron en 2021.
I think that's inconsistent logic to me.
Creo que esa es una lógica inconsistente para mí.
It seems as though it's trying to have it both ways.
Creo que es hasta dónde tenerlo de las dos maneras. Parece que tenerlo de las dos maneras.
Catherine, do you have anything more to add besides your disagreement?
¿Tienes algo más para agregar aparte de tu desacuerdo?
No.
No.
As we all move on to the study, can all the questioners, Pedro and myself, all be on the same translator? Could we all be on the German, please, so that we're all in sync with one another? It
Podemos
just makes it a little bit easier.
pasar todas las personas que hemos preguntado al mismo traductor, así estamos todos en sincronía. Creo que eso va a ser lo más fácil.
Rogers.
Rogers.
Hello, Pedro.
Hola,
Hey,
Pedro.
Rogers.
Hola, Rogers.
I hope you can get me.
I hear you. Now I
Espero
see
que puedas
you.
escucharme. Te escucho, ahora te veo.
So I had the same question as the one Marion asked earlier.
La misma pregunta que Arian te hizo.
So
Oh, we cannot hear you. Can you speak again?
No le podemos escuchar. ¿Te puedes hablar de vuelta?
No, actually, you're not speaking on you are speaking on the mic of the computer. So if you can go closer to the computer eventually or the phone.
No está escuchándose desde el micrófono del auricular, así que le dicen que se acerque más al micrófono de la computadora.
Can you say something?
¿Puedes decir algo?
Can I go?
You're too far. Can you go closer to the mic of the computer or the phone?
¿Puedes acercarte más al micrófono de la computadora, por favor?
Mic
Can you
clear?
speak? Yeah.
Okay. So
Entonces,
you said that when it comes to 2015 for election.
You got far away again, so you have to come closer again, even
Tienes
closer,
que
because
acercarte.
actually you're not speaking in the earphones. You're
No
speaking.
estás hablando en el micrófono del auricular,
Choose the wrong
sino
mic.
de la computadora.
You have to switch mic.
Tienes que cambiar de micrófono.
On the computer, you have to switch the mic on which you speak. On the audio, you have to switch the mic.
I'm going to move on to Tamina while Rogers and Snyder work out their technical problems, if that's okay.
Voy a moverme hacia Tamina, mientras que Rogers y Snyder solucionan el problema con el sonido, si eso les parece bien.
Hi, Pedro.
Hola, Pedro.
My question is about the anchors.
Mi pregunta es acerca de las anclas.
We are given a detail that it's 4 anchors.
Se nos da el detalle que son 4 anclas.
And as we know from X27 already,
Y de lo que sabemos ya de Hechos 27,
there's an importance to the quantity or the numbers.
hay una importancia en la cantidad y en los números.
So you have given us your thought of what the anchors are.
Entonces nos ha dado tu pensamiento de lo que son las anclas.
I was wondering if you have any thoughts about the number 4, if it has any relevancy or if it's important.
Y a veces si tenías algún pensamiento acerca del número 4, si es relevante o si es importante,
That it's 4 anchors.
de que sean 4 anclas.
Thank you for the question.
Gracias por la pregunta.
I think the number
Creo que el número
gives reference to the 4 years.
da referencia a los 4 años.
So the anchors would be basically each
Así
of
que
the
las anclas
4
serían
years. of Biden.
básicamente cada uno de los 4 años de Biden.
I don't need the number 4 to know that this is a presidential period.
No necesito el número 4 para saber que esto es un periodo presidencial.
I think it's nice that we have it there and it's 4.
Pero creo que es lindo que lo tengamos ahí y que sean 4.
Can I make a follow-up question?
¿Puedo hacer una pregunta en continuación a esa?
Hopefully. Or it's fine.
Ojalá que sí. Sí, está bien.
Okay, Parmenter is not answering, so I just ask it. So you use the number 4 as evidence that it's a democratic presidency?
Entonces, quizás el número 4 como evidencia de que es una presidencia democrática.
Not actually.
Eh,
I
no,
would
de
say
hecho.
the number 4 gives evidence that these anchors represent presidential periods.
Diría que el número 4 muestra que estos son periodos presidenciales.
But for me, the evidence that this is 4 years
Pero para mí la evidencia de que estos son 4 años
is based on the fact that the institution knows that they will crash soon.
está basada en el hecho de que la institución sabe de que está por chocar.
So I would say they know that because Trump is coming back.
Así que diría que ellos lo saben porque Trump está por volver.
I don't think Trump is going to have a third opportunity in the future.
No creo que Trump vaya a tener una tercera oportunidad en el futuro.
That's why I understand it to be only one presidential term.
Es por eso que que veo que solamente sea un periodo presidencial.
Together with the other evidence is 4.
Junto con otra evidencia, esto es el 4.
So at the end, that it's 4 anchors is not so important for your study.
Entonces al final que sean 4 anclas no es tan importante para tu estudio.
Not as much, but it's nice to have it.
No tanto, pero es lindo tenerlo.
Okay, thank you.
Ok, gracias.
Tyler.
Tyler.
Hey, oops. Hey, can you hear me all right?
Hear you well.
Hola, ¿puedes escucharme? Puedo
Okay.
escucharte.
So my question is about the anchors as well.
Entonces mi pregunta es acerca de las anclas también.
So Aaron took my initial question about the anchors.
Entonces, Aaron tomó mi pregunta inicial acerca de las anclas.
Or rather, we had the same question about it.
O les parece que teníamos la misma
Regarding
pregunta
naming
acerca de esto,
methodology.
acerca de los nombres y tu metodología.
So I won't go back into that question.
Así que no volveré a esa pregunta.
But I'll just agree that I have concerns about that as well.
Así que lo que sí voy a decir que estoy de acuerdo en que tengo preocupaciones acerca de eso.
My question is about, you said the anchors are democratic presidencies.
Entonces, dijiste que las anclas son presidencias
And you said you
democráticas.
could prove this without the use of the names.
Y dijiste que podías probarlo sin el uso de nombres.
So the first part of the question is, how would you do that?
Entonces, la primera parte de la pregunta sería, ¿cómo harías eso?
The second question I have, which is a little relates to the anchors
La segunda parte de la pregunta diría que está relacionada con las anclas
and really has to do with the sequencing that several people have brought up with the anchors as well.
y estaría relacionada con la secuencia que la gente trajo con las anclas también.
Or not just the anchors, but with the verses themselves.
O no solo con las anclas, pero también con los versículos.
The second set of anchors
El
never
segundo,
gets dropped.
la segunda serie de anclas nunca se llegan a atar, a
So
amarrar.
why does that mean Harris has to win the election and then have an issue with certification?
Entonces, ¿por qué esto significa que Harris gane la elección y tenga un problema con la certificación?
Because there seems to be an issue again with the sequencing. You're pulling that verse to the Sunday law.
Porque de vuelta sí, parece haber un problema con la secuencia al traer esos versículos a la ley dominical.
But then you also see Biden's anchors at the end in verse 41.
Pero también puedes ver las anclas las de Biden en el versículo 40-41.
Yeah, verse 40. Sorry, thank
En el
you.
versículo 40, sí, perdón, con el 40, gracias.
So that's my question.
Entonces, esa es mi pregunta.
How do you prove that they represent democratic presidencies?
¿Cómo pruebas que representan
And
presidencias democráticas?
and then how do you address the
Overlapping.
sequencing issue?
Y luego, ¿cómo atiendes el asunto de la secuencia?
Okay, thank you for the question. So
Ok,
the
gracias por la
beginning of the
pregunta.
answer, I believe, is we
Al
know
comienzo mi respuesta
America
sería,
was under a Republican administration.
sabemos que América estaba bajo administración republicana,
And Acts 27 say they're headed to the rocks in 2021.
y Hechos 27 dice que se dirigen a las rocas en 2021.
So I think it's, at least for me, it's obvious that it has to be the only other option,
Así que creo que para mí es obvio que la única otra opción,
which is a democratic presidency.
que es una presidencia democrática,
I believe the anchors are prophesying about a return of a democratic presidency.
creo que las anclas están profetizando sobre el regreso de una presidencia democrática
After Trump's first term.
después del primer término de Trump.
Now, about the second part of the question,
Ahora, acerca de la segunda parte de la pregunta,
I said the anchors of Biden are verse 29,
dije que las anclas de Biden son el versículo 29,
so we put 29 here.
así que pondría 29 aquí.
But these same anchors, they reappear
Pero estas
in
mismas
verse
anclas
40.
reaparecen en el versículo 40.
Yet I'm saying
Aún
that
así
in
estoy
verse
diciendo
30
que el versículo
we
30
have camel as anchors.
tenemos las anclas de Camela.
I think it's part of the overlapping of presidents
Creo que es parte la superposición de presidentes.
from where when they are elected and when they finally get certified and inaugurated.
Desde cuando son elegidos hasta que son certificados e instituidos e inauguran su presidencia.
If I can offer one quick follow-up.
Before you do that, Tyler, what's question one?
Entonces, ¿cuál es perdón, antes que lo hagas, Tyler, ¿cuál es la pregunta número 1?
Question one is how does he show that the anchors are the democratic presidencies?
La pregunta es cómo muestra que las anclas son presidencias democráticas.
Pedro, can you answer how do you get anchors equals a presidential cycle? Where do you get that?
Pero puedes demostrar de dónde sacas estos son ciclos presidenciales, de dónde lo obtienes.
If you take out the names of the presidents.
Si quitas los nombres de los presidentes.
Yes. So
Sí.
the ship is going towards the rocks.
Entonces
verse
la
28,
nave está yendo hacia las rocas en el versículo 28,
20 and 29,
28 y 29,
but they drop anchors to avoid crashing.
pero tienen anclas para evitar el
That
choque.
threat of ending of a democracy, I believe, is January 2021.
Esa amenaza del fin de la democracia yo creo que es enero de 2021.
Meaning that a continuation of a Republican presidency, which would have been Trump,
Significando que una continuación de una presidencia republicana, que hubiera sido Trump,
would
Can I
have
stop you
been
for a
these
moment?
rocks. Yeah.
¿puedo tenerte por un segundo?
It sounds like you're using logic
Suena como que estás utilizando lógica.
as opposed. I suppose you're using logic
Supongo que estás utilizando lógica.
rather than methodology or symbology.
Antes que metodología o simbología.
I think Tyler's question is,
Creo que la pregunta de Tyler es,
how do you get a presidential cycle from
No.
anchors?
¿cómo tienes un ciclo presidencial desde anclas, partiendo de anclas?
Using methodology, not logic.
Utilizando metodología y no lógica.
Let me try to separate the two.
Déjame tratar de separar las dos.
The reason I say that
La razón por la que la digo
the reason I say that
La razón por la que lo digo
is without defining anchors some other way other than logic,
es que sin definir las anclas de otra manera que no sea la lógica,
the symbol of the group of, we could just call them civil servants.
el grupo de los que podríamos llamar sirvientes civiles,
We've already shown to be able to restrain Trump's during his presidency.
ya hemos demostrado que se ha podido restringir la presidencia de Trump.
Could be an equally valid symbol to use here.
Podría ser un símbolo igualmente válido para utilizar aquí.
If we're just talking about something that stops shipwreck.
Si hablamos de algo que haya detenido el naufragio.
I don't necessarily agree with that symbol, just that I'm offering an alternative using the same idea or logic.
No es que esté en desacuerdo con el símbolo, sino que estoy ofreciendo otra idea, siguiendo más o menos la misma lógica.
Tyler, can you use logic to replace symbology?
Tyler, ¿puedes utilizar lógica para reemplazar a la simbología?
I think you would need proper context to be able to do that if you were going to do that.
Creo que necesitarías el contexto adecuado para poder hacer eso si fueras a hacerlo.
Do you have a response, Pedro? Or I wanted to repeat the second question if you don't have a response to that.
¿Tienes la respuesta, Pedro? Si no, quiero que haga la segunda pregunta.
I want to say that he said if we have proper context, we can do it. Use logic over symbology.
Él dijo que si tenemos
If you don't
well,
have
sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, as of now, I don't think I have a proper answer for those good questions.
The second question, Tyler.
The second question was about the sequencing of the verses.
Summarize what you're unhappy about.
Overlapping verse 30 and verse 40 in the same waymark. Without a reason to do that, which is what we were talking about earlier with the chopping up the verses. That was it.
So, well, I think I answered already. For me, the anchors in verse 40 is Biden leaving office. And 30, sorry, go ahead. And verse 30 is just Kamala's presidency not being certified. Now, why are those anchors meaning that she won the election? I think you asked. Did you?
That was the second part of it.
So my defense was that if in the back of the ship, dropping the anchors was to certify without mentioning elections, because the elections would have been the year before the waymark that we have. I think the Bible, it's highlighting this other set of anchors because it means that she wants the election, yet never dropped.
The follow-up to that, I guess, would just be that if we don't have a solid reason to define that symbol as presidencies, you're like 3 or 4 steps of logic down that line without defining your initial symbol, I think, properly. You're now at the point where you're talking about the nuance of election versus certification. Of a different person, even Kamala Harris. Without defining, again, I think, without the names, what those anchors even are.
Okay, so does my logic about the anchors being a democratic presidency is not enough? I know it's logic and not symbology.
I just want to move on and ask if Snyder or Rogers have worked out their technical problems.
Can you be able to hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. I'll try to put in a video. Okay. So my question is in relation to the repeating patterns that you wrote at the beginning of the class. And you indicated the four-way map, 1989, 2001, 2021, and 2025. And then you got Boston as the first way map, then Concord, Exeter, and then Shandong. Okay, so my question is in relation to what we, like the beginning of the repeating patterns back in 2018, I believe. And I believe we went to the history of the Millerites from 1998 to 1840. And also from July 21st to October 22nd, 1844. And how it was drawn was that the repeating pattern is between two major waves. How it was drawn, it was between like two smaller waves.
I lost you.
So you have two smaller waves. So like
Two smaller waymarks between the two major waymarks. This board work, I don't think is representing what she's talking about. Is she? Is it?
no, but I'm trying to make material with the back. So I'm referencing the repeating pattern studies that was done back in 2018. That's what I'm doing. So Pedro has written like Boston Concord Exeter is a major way map of the following.
Snyder, could you switch your video off, please, and just do audio?
Yeah. So my question is in relation to those repeating patterns. How can you fix them in the major way map while we have understood them to be two smaller way maps between two larger way maps? Yes, and then another, maybe a related one is...
Well, let's stop there.
Okay.
Pedro, do you understand the question?
I want to know, there's two smaller ones. You mean these two in the middle or another ones?
Yes, like between 1989 to 2000, you have two smaller way marks in between.
Okay.
Then Boston, Concord, Exeter. Boston as 1989, Concord as 1991, and Exeter as 1996.
So I guess you're asking how I made 2001 and 2021 Concord and Exeter?
Pedro, is that okay? Am I clear?
I just want to clarify part of your question. Are you asking me? Are you asking me how I made 2001 and 2021 Concord and Exeter?
Yes.
Okay. So the first part of my question is that I don't believe there's two smaller waymarks here. In the story of this fifth line. I don't think they're there. So that's why I understand that the Concord of this period is 2001 and Exeter is 2021. So I've never seen a study that finds all the smaller two waymarks in between using Acts 27. That was my logic.
While Snyder is waiting, Boston, Concord, Exeter, as you've got it, 89, 01 and 21. Did you create that, Pedro, or have you borrowed that from someone else?
It is my personal understanding of the fifth line.
Snyder's question is, how do you justify doing that?
Yeah.
So the way I justify it is that I understand this to be a dispensation. And I believe dispensations have this structure. Boston, Concord, and Exeter, and Chateau. These two waymarks being the big ones for the ship.
And Schneider, you have an objection to that?
Yeah. Principally, I don't think I'm doing that.
I couldn't hear you.
And maybe in relation to that, is where do you mark the formalization between 20? Oh, sorry. Maybe I'll just leave that because you said it's not in between. You just leave it.
Okay.
Why do you object to this, Snyder? What's wrong with it?
I think the story, like beginning from Boston, Concord, Exeter, it should be one concurrent story. And I think the story that he has been developing begins from 2021 going to 2025. Yeah, I think, and the like I can't thread through a story consistently from 1989 to 2020.
Pedro, is the basis of this line the threading of certification, or the electoral cycle, which would be the same thing? And is that how you get 89, 01, and 21 as Boston, Concord, and Exeter? Is this a line of election cycles?
So first of all, this is the line of the institution. These three waymarks, I did not make them up. That's what we have from the Midnight Cry. And I just have personally understood that they comprehend a dispensation. If you allow me to compare with another dispensation, here we have it. This is one dispensation of the ship, and this is the other one. So you asked about the pattern or the threading. I just observed the three waymarks that we already had. And saw that they have a consistent pattern that relate the certification, vice presidents, and the transition process between one president and another. And then I just fill in the blank, which is in the future.
Over to you, Snyder.
Okay, I think I'll stop there.
Okay. Rogers? Rogers, do you have a question?
Hello, Pedro. Can you get me?
I hear you well.
Okay. So my question was on, you suggested that 2024 election will be similar to the year 2000. We understand that the election of the year 2000 was very close. So I think we should get around 221 electoral college votes.
It cut a little bit.
What?
For me. Can you repeat?
You have bandwidth problem, Rogers, and it cuts out. That's what the issue is.
No, can you come closer to the device, very close to the mic of the device, not the mic on your headphones, but the mic of the device.
Try again.
Bush had around 271 electoral college votes.
It's still too far. Sorry about that. If you can do exactly as Snyder did it, I was able to listen to her.
I'm saying Bush had 271 electoral college votes.
Okay.
And Joe had 266. And Joe had 266.
Al Gore, I believe that's what you said. I'm losing you.
So are you suggesting that the 2024 election will be very close. Which then will bring issues similar to 2000.
If there's going to be issues similar to 2000.
Yeah. Which will lead to Kamala not being certified. Not, if she wins by a margin close to what Biden got in 2020, I think was around 306 electoral college votes. 306, 306. Then how do they decertify that? Like what exactly happens until Trump becomes president? She doesn't with such a big margin. That's my question.
So hopefully I understood your question.
Pedro, if you understand the question, can you repeat it?
Yeah.
Because I don't understand the question.
The first thing that I understood is how Bush 271 electoral votes were certified. And how does it mean that Al Gore won the election? That's what I got. And then I understood about the big margin. Biden won over Trump by kind of a big margin. If Kamala wins a similar way, how can they steal the election? Is that what I...
Okay, sorry, let me clarify one point.
Okay.
So the explanation on why election was stolen from Al Gore in 2000 was somehow clear to me because they were fighting over one state, which is Florida.
So they were fighting
one
over
state.
the certification of Florida.
And what they were fighting over, the margin is small. Will it be the same scenario in 2024? Where, for example, Kamala wins in Pennsylvania by a few votes. Then Trump files lawsuits. Maybe some women votes are thrown out.
Can I stop for a minute? Sorry. These sound like political questions, not prophetic ones. I'm not sure that Pedro is qualified to answer these technical political questions. And unless I'm missing what the prophetic question is.
Basically, I wanted to understand if Kamala wins, how does her not being certified look like?
So I would refer you to the different articles. I will share some. Some have already been shared.
Did I
Of how
stop
they
you,
go
Pedro?
about. Yeah.
The answer he's going to give is he doesn't know. Because these are political scenarios, not prophetic modeling. Unless I've missed something. Pedro, you can finish responding.
So sticking to the prophetic part, they will be fighting over one or more states. And how it goes specifically, I don't know. They're going to be fighting over different states. And so that's it.
If you wanted to follow up, Rogers, you can have another. You can do that.
I think the question I had was earlier asked by Arian. I'm okay.
We've run out of time. In fact, we've gone over time, of course. I want to apologize for people who wrote in their questions and didn't get an opportunity to have them answered. Maybe we'll make an arrangement with Pedro to do something about those written questions, if he's willing. I just want to make a comment. Of the 11 people that asked questions, I was only aware of the position of 2 of them. The other 9, I hadn't spoken to them. I had no idea what their position was, or even if they had one. Just want to make that clear to everybody. I hope that this has been a profitable and enriching experience for everybody. I know that Pedro said that he will share. We've already shared these quotes with the members. He said he's going to share his presentation notes, I think.
Yes.
So we will share that. You've heard the various questions and concerns that the questioners had. I don't know if you're willing, Pedro, to answer people's personal questions.
The ones that are written?
No, if people ask you follow-up questions.
Oh, I don't have a problem.
If anybody has any questions, I guess particularly based on the 11 questions that were asked, Pedro's willing to communicate with you or dialogue with you. I hope everybody feels that they have been served well. I hope you feel that you've been served well and fairly, Pedro. Don't have to answer.
I do.
And I want to thank the questioners. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. Having said that, if we're okay to close with prayer. Holy God, we thank you for the privilege of exploring and understanding your word. Many of us know the difficult position that Pedro has been in today. He has carried himself in an exemplary way. We thank you for his dignity and his honesty. It's up to us, Lord, that you have given a responsibility to understand the truth, individually and collectively. May we use today's studies to understand clearer our individual and our corporate responsibility. In Jesus' name, amen. I want to thank everybody for attending. And if you're willing, you can put your video on and wave, as we tend to do at these camp meetings. And we'll all meet together soon.
Nos vemos nuevamente pronto.
Até a próxima campal.